On August 29, 2025, a federal appellate court delivered a stunning blow to President Trump's America First trade agenda, sending shockwaves through the highest levels of government and industry. The decision, which came after months of heated legal battles and intense public debate, marked a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle over the limits of presidential power in shaping U.S. trade policy. In a landmark ruling, the court declared that Trump's sweeping global tariffs had exceeded the executive authority granted under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a law originally designed to address national security threats, not to serve as a blanket tool for economic policy. Legal experts and constitutional scholars immediately began dissecting the implications, noting that the decision could fundamentally alter the balance of power between Congress and the White House. The 7-4 decision sent shockwaves through global markets, challenging the core of Trump's economic strategy and raising urgent questions about the legality of his broad use of tariffs. Investors reacted with uncertainty as stock markets tumbled and international trading partners scrambled to assess the impact on their own economies. For many, the ruling signaled a possible end to years of escalating trade tensions and retaliatory tariffs that had disrupted supply chains worldwide. While tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automobiles under Section 232 remained in effect for the time being, industries that had been both protected and hurt by these measures watched anxiously. Manufacturers, exporters, and workers across the country wondered what the future would hold, as the legal uncertainty cast a long shadow over their businesses and livelihoods. The court's move created a dramatic legal and political standoff, with both sides preparing for a fierce battle that could reshape the very foundation of American trade law. Politicians, advocacy groups, and legal teams quickly mobilized, knowing that the next steps would be watched, not just in Washington, but around the world. All eyes turned to the Supreme Court, where the ultimate fate of the tariffs and the scope of presidential power would soon be decided. The ruling didn't end the tariffs immediately. A temporary stay kept them in place. But it set the stage for a high-stakes battle over the future of global trade and presidential power. As diplomats, business leaders, and ordinary citizens awaited the Supreme Court's decision, the world braced for a turning point that could redefine the rules of international commerce for years to come. The appellate court's decision wasn't about the wisdom of tariffs, but about presidential limits under IEPA. Judges found Trump's use of IEPA to impose broad, long-term tariffs far exceeded the law's intent, which was for targeted emergency actions, not a permanent rewrite of global trade. The court warned that unchecked executive power would sideline Congress's constitutional role in regulating foreign commerce. By upholding a lower court's ruling, the judges made clear, even in a crisis, the president must act within the law. This set the stage for a Supreme Court battle over the very balance of power in American government. The Trump administration responded with defiance, vowing to appeal to the Supreme Court and keep tariffs in place. President Trump and his team framed the ruling as judicial overreach, rallying supporters and maintaining economic pressure on trading partners. A temporary stay allowed tariffs to continue while the legal fight escalated, preserving Trump's leverage and political image. The administration's bet, a conservative Supreme Court might back broad executive authority in trade and national security. The U.S. court battle sent tremors worldwide, reverberating through capitals and boardrooms alike. As the legal fight unfolded, nations found themselves caught between hope for a resolution that might ease economic tensions and deep anxiety over the possibility of prolonged trade aggression. The uncertainty rippled through financial markets, with investors and policymakers scrambling to assess the potential fallout. Across continents, anxious traders watched stock tickers swing wildly, while business leaders huddled in tense meetings, and factory workers followed the news, wondering how their livelihoods might be affected by the next headline. China, Canada, and Mexico, three of America's largest trading partners, faced steep tariffs and mounting economic pain. Factories slowed production, shipping ports saw containers pile up, and workers braced for layoffs as the cost of doing business soared. Meanwhile, new threats emerged, targeting Canadian lumber and Brazilian agricultural goods. Exporters in both countries scrambled to find new markets, while government officials weighed retaliatory measures and emergency support for affected industries. U.S. allies like South Korea and Japan balked at massive cash demands for tariff relief, finding themselves in an unfamiliar position, negotiating not just for access, but for the very terms of their economic relationship with Washington. These transactional demands highlighted a dramatic shift in U.S. trade policy, where alliances were tested, and every deal seemed to come with a price tag attached. Even Europe, with its vast economic power, felt the impact. European leaders convened emergency meetings, debating how best to shield their economies from the growing storm. Currency interventions became a tool of last resort, and major companies like AstraZeneca pledged huge U.S. investments in hopes of avoiding punitive tariffs. The pressure to adapt was relentless, forcing businesses to rethink global strategies overnight. The global economy teetered on the edge, with financial markets in turmoil, economists warning of recession, and trade routes disrupted as ships sat idle in ports around the world. The court ruling, while significant, offered only a faint hope of stability. Investors and governments alike wondered if it would be enough to restore confidence or merely a brief pause in an escalating conflict. For now, the world watched and waited, holding its breath as the legal and political drama played out, uncertain of what the next chapter in this global saga would bring. The tariff war's economic fallout was widespread. Japan's factories slowed, U.S. farmers lost key export markets, and American homebuilders warned of rising costs. The new tariffs on trucks rattled the auto industry, slashing earnings for global manufacturers and threatening U.S. jobs. Ending the de minimis exemption raised prices for American consumers used to cheap online imports. Each new policy created winners and losers, with gains for some U.S. industries coming at a steep cost to others. The result: a contradictory economic landscape, marked by uncertainty and disruption at home and abroad. The legal uncertainty only deepened the turmoil. Facing legal setbacks, the Trump administration pivoted to Section 232, imposing new tariffs on goods from movies to pharmaceuticals, all under the banner of national security. The move targeted foreign-made drugs, kitchen cabinets, trucks, and more, with some tariffs reaching 100%. By invoking national security, the White House sought a stronger legal footing and greater deference from the courts. Companies scrambled to adapt. Pfizer negotiated discounts, AstraZeneca pledged billions in U.S. investment to avoid crippling duties. The administration's tactics forced global firms to make costly concessions, even as the broader legal fight raged on. The message protectionism would continue, one way or another. As of October 4, 2025, global trade stands at a crossroads, defined by legal battles, executive defiance, and a growing sense that the old rules no longer apply. The world's interconnected markets are being tested as never before, with every nation watching closely to see what comes next. Economic uncertainty is mounting as the Supreme Court prepares to decide whether presidents can unilaterally reshape trade policy, or if Congress must retain its constitutional authority over international commerce. This pivotal case has drawn intense scrutiny from lawmakers, business leaders, and global partners alike. At stake is the delicate balance of power between the executive and legislative branches, a balance that has defined U.S. trade policy for generations. Meanwhile, new tariffs and retaliatory measures are being announced at a dizzying pace, and looming deadlines keep markets on edge, fueling volatility and uncertainty for investors, manufacturers, and consumers. The ripple effects are being felt far beyond America's borders. U.S. allies are forced into defensive transactional relationships, scrambling to adapt to shifting policies and unpredictable negotiations. The crisis has exposed vulnerabilities in global supply chains, revealing just how fragile the system can be when trust breaks down. As uncertainty grows, nations are increasingly looking inward, considering whether to strengthen regional blocs or pursue aggressive industrial policies to protect their economies. The world is witnessing a shift toward new alliances and economic strategies. The Trump administration's approach has strained alliances, forcing even the closest partners to reconsider their commitments and strategies. Decades of U.S. trade leadership have been upended, leaving a vacuum that others may seek to fill. Whether this period leads to meaningful reform or deeper fragmentation remains to be seen. The choices made now will shape the future of global commerce for a generation. The events of the past year have permanently altered the landscape of global commerce, challenging assumptions and forcing a reckoning with the realities of a rapidly changing world. The world now waits for a Supreme Court decision that could define the future of international trade for decades to come. As the stakes rise, the outcome will not only determine America's role in the world economy, but also set a precedent for how nations navigate the complex challenges of globalization in the 21st century.